Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our Move to Heal podcast. My name is Ethan Hershman.
I'm Colleen Delaney.
I'm Ethan Hershman.
And we are the co-founders of Move to Heal. And today is a really special episode because we are actually going to be talking about Ethan's journey and his journey with addiction and sobriety. And he's sitting here in front of us today with 29 years, almost 30 years of sobriety, which is so incredible. And Ethan, thank you for coming on here today and talking to us and sharing your journey and being so vulnerable. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I want to dive right into some of the questions that we have for you and some questions that I feel someone listening may really benefit hearing from you. The first one is, I want you to share a little bit about your personal journey with addiction, what that looked like for you, and ultimately what led you to seek help.
Okay, so I usually tell this story by starting out where I grew up and what my life was as a kid and that sort of thing, but. To talk specifically about the addiction, I'll go right to when I was like 13 years old. It was the first time that I had tried, smoking pot, and I had a few drinks before that. And by the time I was 14, I was smoking pot every single day. The alcohol wasn't as prevalent in my life yet at that point. Fast forward a couple of years, I was 16 years old. I got introduced to cocaine, which I immediately loved. It made me social. It brought me out of my shell. I literally remember being at a keg party and on this dirt road, the cops show up. I have like a 1/4 gram of coke in my pocket. I run into the woods. The cops are clearing out all the kids because we're all underage, and I snort the coke, and I get such a level of confidence. I decided I'm going to go talk to the cops.
Oh my gosh.
So I come out of the woods. I start talking to the cops. I tell them I live down the street. They're super nice to me, and and they didn't say anything bad. They said just probably should go home, and I walked away from there going, "This is like a miracle drug for me. I can do anything when I do this stuff."
I feel like that is like such a pivotal point in your story.
Well, it was cocaine for me anyway. When I first started using it, it did everything for me. It did a lot of things for me. So anyway, from that point forward, I would get it and use it whenever I could. But I didn't have. It was very expensive back then, and I didn't have the money for it. But I was going to figure out a way. And the other thing about cocaine for me was it made me and allowed me to drink a lot, because it would straighten me right out. It would bring me, right up from the depths of drunkenness. So
would you say it was cocaine was the drug of choice, or was the drug of choice cocaine and alcohol?
Well, cocaine and alcohol cocaine was my drug of choice, but I couldn't do that without drinking, and I couldn't drink without using. So I became cross addicted very quickly.
Okay.
Went through high school, started selling drugs in high school, to help with not only my cocaine use, but also my marijuana use. I was smoking pot every day, and I didn't want to have to pay for that. So that's how I got started. I started out selling pot. Ultimately, I was selling cocaine, but that was after high school. I met Kathy, your mom, in the midst of all this. So we became high school sweethearts, and she was also, a partying buddy for a long time. And I although my addiction wasn't slowing me down on my life, I felt like I wanted to get my life accomplished and done so I could keep my addiction going. And I know that probably doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit?
What I can explain is like I wanted to be super successful. I wanted to make a lot of money because I didn't want my addiction to get in the way of having a house or a car or anything like that.
Which many times it does.
Many times it does.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to be able to enter the family business. My father gave me a ton of responsibility at a young age that I took on. And in order for me to handle that, I dropped out of college after a year and joined the family business. In order for me to handle that and keep my addiction going, I became what I refer to as like a weekend warrior. So Friday afternoon would hit, the partying would start, and that wouldn't end until Sunday night, typically.
And what are we saying? Like you say partying. What does that mean? Because that's different for everybody.
Yeah, so that was picking up the cocaine Friday at noon, going to the bar, and then, a few more visits to the drug dealer throughout the weekend. On a good weekend, I would get some sleep. But a lot of the weekends, especially the last few years of my addiction, I wouldn't sleep between. Last time I would sleep Thursday night, and then I wouldn't sleep again until Sunday night.
Can I ask you a question? How much thought, was it consuming in terms of like Monday, Tuesday? Are you already thinking about Friday? Like, are you ready to?
It's a great question.
You can't wait?
Yeah. So, I would maintain during the week by smoking weed.
So no drinking, no.
Maybe a little bit of drinking,
okay,
but not much.
And no cocaine during the week.
And most weeks, yeah.
Okay.
And then, but by Friday, the compulsion and the obsession with using was so strong that I literally couldn't function. I couldn't think.
That's all you could think
I could
about.
not think about anything else.
Wow.
There was nothing that could distract me from it, especially by lunchtime. And when you get in the pattern, even my stomach would get upset at noontime, and it was crazy.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot actually.
Yeah,
like the
physical and the mental effects.
Yeah, like even like the pre-ritual of like you're gonna go get it. And what that feels like.
All the excitement. It was.
Okay.
It was something that was intoxicating, really.
Yeah.
What was your mindset on Monday morning after everything, transpired over the weekend?
Oh, God.
What were some of the things that you were feeling?
Well, why did I do that again? Was a lot of the time. The shame, the lies, the deception to do what I had to do was enormous. It was enormous. And actually in the last, if I fast forward 10 years, 11 years when I was, after Allie was born and I was, pretending that I was sober. So I could only use when I wasn't home. So I had to go on these road trips that were not real road trips. I mean, I'd have one day of business to do, but I would turn it into a 2 or 3 day road trip. And I had a business up in Rochester, New York. So that was the perfect thing. I mean, I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, start snorting cocaine, drive to Rochester.
Wow.
I remember meeting with my partner, having to have like 6 drinks before I went in to meet with him because I was so wired. And then sitting with him for 4 or 5 hours and blowing lines in the bathroom in between and drinking as much Coca-Cola as I could and water. And and then just going to the hotel and not sleeping. And
like so much effort to just try to like maintain some sort of normalcy or like professionalism.
It was horrible. And then every time that I did this, sometimes I would just go right to the hotel and I'd have the meeting the next day. But every time I did it and I got to that hotel room and I finished all the cocaine and the vodka and beer and whatever else I might be putting into my system, it was usually like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And I would be like, you talk about how did I feel, Kyle? I would be so full of shame. I would be so disgusted with myself. I wanted every single time. And I'm like, I gotta sleep. And I couldn't sleep. And I just wanted to leave the room, climb onto the roof and jump off every time.
Wow.
I wanted to die.
Were you able to hide it from the people that you were meeting with at these meetings and people that were in your life?
Totally. I was totally able to hide it, except from Kath. She knew, but she didn't know, type of thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
did she know but didn't necessarily want to believe it? Like, what do you mean? Because I feel like sometimes people can be in a bit of denial just to protect themselves and their feelings and the potential of the severity of something.
Not want to believe it's true.
Yeah. I think, yeah, she was definitely, yeah, I mean, when I was in Syracuse, New York in a hotel room, she didn't know what I was doing. So, on those trips, she never really knew, but I think she knew, you know, because at the time it was Coke. Don't do Coke. You know, I could drink still a little bit and
did
smoke
she
weed and
understand
stuff like
that it was kind of this package deal? Like it's hard to drink without the urge to want to go do Coke and then vice versa?
I don't think she fully understood that at the time.
And many people don't, you know? It's like, okay, you have an issue with cocaine, just stop doing that.
Yeah.
But you can go drink, you know?
Yeah,
It's like,
no. It was, she definitely, because I was allowed to have a couple glasses of wine or something like that, which meant, I mean, if she really knew everything that was going on, that meant I was going to use.
And as you say this, like it is so, and I'm sure for everyone in this room right now, you even having a glass of wine, I've never seen it, right? I never experienced my dad in his active addiction, which I hope you get to this part of the story and telling that, but it's just such a foreign concept for me, for you to have a glass of wine. I can't even like picture what that would look like. And that's such a blessing for me. I know that children, spouses, parents, like that's, you know, not everyone is that fortunate. So it's just it's always interesting hearing your story. It's like I'm listening to you talk about somebody else. It's not you.
Yeah.
Well, I promise you that if, you know, I had started drinking anytime, you know, like let's say recently, neither of you would want to be around me and you wouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's just, I was, all my bad traits that you've seen.
Yeah.
Multiply them times 1,000, and that was Ethan on drugs and alcohol.
Right. And the thing is, like, the core of so many people who are dealing with addiction, the core is so good. They're good people. They're loving people. They're caring people. The addiction is an ugly beast.
Yeah, they're just sick.
They're sick.
Yeah.
They're sick people.
Sick, yeah.
And it's really crazy to hear your story because when you sit in the Move to Heal meetings, so many people have similar stories and the traits and the character defects and are all similar. And what it really all comes down to is we all have trauma.
Yeah.
And what behaviors are we doing that, and we're acting out in that,
To
you know,
numb, to suppress.
Yeah, I mean
you know?
the addiction creates its own problem, but
the consequence of trauma.
But it was all like every time, you know, if I look back to when I started using, it was to escape stuff I didn't even know I had.
Did you know that at the time though, or were you just like, I just love cocaine, I love alcohol, I'm able to still make money and be, you know?
Well,
like,
look at it this way. It was kind of like all the things like I didn't like about myself, that I wasn't popular, and I couldn't talk to people, and I was shy. All that stuff disappeared. So anything that was causing my anxieties or my low self-esteem or whatever it might be at that time, all of my life traumas that created that, that
Went away.
disappeared.
Makes you feel like a superhero.
Yeah, so it was like treating the symptom, but not the condition.
Right. Not the root. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Okay.
and I never realized until actually we started Move to Heal and we started having, non-addicts and alcoholics in these recovery meetings, because I just went to AA before that. That's what it was. That my addiction was created. That I always thought that was the problem. Like, just stop drinking and drugging and everything will be fine.
Yes.
And initially, when I did stop drinking and drugging, everything was fine. I was coming home on time. I wasn't lying or deceiving anybody to do what I needed to do. I wasn't stealing. I wasn't doing any of these horrible things that I did to get what I needed when I needed it. So I felt like, this is great. I'm perfectly fine. I'm good now, And then over time, as my sobriety continued, I didn't, the things that caused the initial pain that I was escaping were starting to bubble up. And I had to learn how to deal with that. And I had to, and the program that I was in and still am today, Alcoholics Anonymous, has the 12 steps to teach you how to start dealing with those issues.
Yeah. Which we talk about all the time, how they can be applied to really anybody.
Well, and the thing I didn't realize was, they were designed for alcoholics, right? And drug addicts. And there's OA, there's a million anonymous programs. But the thing I didn't realize was that everybody faces these issues in some form or another, and that I thought these were just alcoholic addiction problems. Like, I just thought I had all this because I was an addict alcoholic. I didn't realize, when I was, when I grew up with a mentally ill mother, that had any effect on me at all, like any effect. And a lot of that trauma as a kid is what created my personality, what created me to escape the things that felt uncomfortable, all that stuff. So yeah, I was, just to move towards the end of the story, or the end of the active part of addiction.
And how many years was your active addiction?
Well, started when I was 14 and ended 10 days before my 31st birthday.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was...
All right, so about 15 years.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. But the final straw wasn't the final, but it actually got me onto the path of recovery, was when you were 2 years old, and we were all going to California for a conference that I had, and my friend Ernie was living out there at the time, and I was going to go visit him on somewhere in the middle of the week for a day and a night. And I picked up some cocaine on Friday to save till I got there, which I could never save it.
Yeah.
I never once saved cocaine.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
But I had it to save, and your mom went to New York with a friend, actually, who's my sponsor's wife, for the day, and I was to babysit you. And my addiction had led me to become a crack addict, and I took the cocaine as soon as she left. I cooked it up, turned it into crack, started drinking and smoking crack, and not taking care of you. And by the end of the day, you had maybe been fed once. Your diaper was dirty when mom got home, and she knew. I couldn't hide it, what happened. And she did what she always did when she caught me. She threw me out of the bedroom. She said, "I can't stand you. You got to get out of my face." This is what she used to do. And then she wouldn't talk to me for a couple of days, and I'd be really nice, and 10 days or so would go by, and then she'd give me another chance. And sometimes throw me out of the house. Sometimes I'd have to go live somewhere else for my parents or something. But this time, She sat me down and very quietly and calmly looked me in the eye and said, you know, I love you so much that if it was just me, I could live with this the rest of my life and probably would. But I can't have my daughter raised by a drug addict. So I'm going to go to California with you. And when we get back, you got to go. And then very calmly she said, now get out of the bed, get out of my face, because I can't stand looking at you right now. Mm. And you would think that would have an amazing impact on me right at that very moment. Mm-hmm. And you know, the only thing I thought of,
what's that?
I still got some cocaine left. I'm going to go snort it in the other room.
Wow.
That was the only thing I thought of at that very moment.
Yeah.
However, I went to California and I did what I always did. I pretended that I was into getting sober. I brought a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with me. I fake prayed every day. I obviously didn't drink or do cocaine. She was still allowing me to smoke pot, so I was smoking pot. And I took your mom on a shopping spree, and I bought her whatever she wanted, and it worked. We got home, and she said, you know, if you go back to AA, I'll let you stay. Mm-hmm. And she said, the only thing I want you to do this time is I want you to talk to this specific person who's still my sponsor.
Wow. 29 years later.
Who was the husband of her friend Kathy. And he started taking me to meetings, and I could have done what I had always done for 5 years before. Gone to meetings for about a month, mm-hmm. said I feel better, and bailed again. Okay. And then figured out how I was going to use. And you had tried
to get sober. Like, you attempted to get sober.
For 5 years.
For 5 years.
Before that. But never planning on getting sober. My life had just gotten I'd gotten too much trouble.
Oh, okay.
And it was the only way I was going to keep the marriage together.
So it was...
But I never intended on
your attempts to get sober. Were they for you or were they for your wife?
They were for show.
They were for show.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I'd come back and, you know, she would think I was getting healed and then I'd just stop going to meetings and then I would start hiding it again.
Wow.
And that's the way it went. This time, for whatever reason, you know, the universe wanted me to get sober. Okay. And this time I went to the meetings and I wanted it.
Okay. Can I ask you one question? So
that was your rock bottom?
Yeah. Yeah.
The 5 years that you attempted to get sober, did you think that you had an issue?
I knew I had an issue.
You knew you had an issue.
I couldn't stop.
You couldn't stop. When did you know you had an issue? Like, when were you like,
when I was 18.
When you were 18 and then continued for the next.
Well, here's what it was. Before I was 18, I could use cocaine once a month.
Okay.
And then when I had enough money again, I would buy some more and I'd use again.
Okay.
But I didn't worry about when was I going to use again. Mm. By the time I was 18, I had to use every week. Mm-hmm. I had to.
The turmoil that must cause mentally and physically. So like physically what the drugs do to your body, but also mentally fighting the addiction is so draining.
And like knowing, like a lot of people are in denial. They're like, oh, I don't have an issue. And then that way it kind of allows this like guilt-free drinking or drug use or whatever it may be. But for you, you knew you had an issue, but you just continued to use and drink, which is why that guilt and shame must have been so intense.
Yeah, and it kept getting worse and worse. So like the last 2 years before I got sober, I was into crack, right? Mm-hmm. So I was into crack for a while, but more than 2 years. But I was really into it the last 2 years. And you know, as an older athlete now, my maximum heart rate's around 160, 165 beats per minute when I'm flat out. Mm-hmm. I was laying in bed with my heartbeat at that level and not being able to breathe. And I had to go to the hospital twice. Wow. And both times the doctor said, you almost had a heart attack. You need help.
Right.
Like, you've got to stop this cocaine stuff. And still didn't stop me.
So basically you either were going to get sober or you were going to die. Like, did you have, those were really your only options at that point,
That's
right?
how I felt.
Yeah.
And I guess the beauty of hitting rock bottom is you get help, and the only way to go is up.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was that like? So now you come back from California, you call this person who's now still your sponsor to this day. Were you sober from that point on, or?
I wasn't sober then.
Oh, you weren't sober then.
I was still smoking weed.
Okay.
I was still smoking weed. So it took me 3 months of going to meetings before I realized that that I needed to stop smoking pot.
Okay.
That had to come to an end.
Okay. So 3 months of meetings, then you stop smoking, and then what happens?
Well, it's still happening.
Okay.
You know.
So what is
so
that?
I go to meetings. I do service work. I try and help people whenever I reach out to them and try and help them whenever I possibly can. And I work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous
To this day.
to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it did ultimately, as we've talked about in our first podcast, it led me to move to heal, right? And starting this sort of next phase, which is, to me that move to heal has been allowed me to supercharge the service work.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowed me to help people that were, and I don't like to ever put down Alcoholics Anonymous, but there's some people that don't like it for whatever reason.
That's actually
Yeah.
a really, good point. So I have a question. You've been going to Alcoholics Anonymous for however many years. Once you added Move to Heal into the mix, what was the difference, or what was that extra push that you needed that helped your healing journey?
Well, my eyes opened up to a lot of things. We discussed a little earlier about addiction being an escape from the real base trauma, right? And then it becomes its own trauma and its own problem. I never knew that. Like, it took me 28 years, and it wasn't until I'm sitting in recovery meetings with non-alcoholics and non-drug addicts and realizing that they're no different from me. Or I'm no different from them,
Right.
whatever you want to say. Because I thought all these problems were unique to addicts and alcoholics because that's the only people that are in those rooms.
Right.
And that's one of the big things that I think is really good about Move to Heal is that we are, quote unquote, non-denominational. And we don't, we just say, hey, I'm Ethan, or I'm Allie, I'm Colleen. We don't mark ourselves with this alcoholic, drug addict, eating disorder, gambler.
And you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah. And
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's just amazing. So my journey continues to get better. I continue to get closer to the energy in the universe that I connect to. And honestly, I found something now with Move to Heal that after a 40-year successful career in business, which I thought would be sort of one of the shining stars of my life, I'm realizing the shining part of it is that it can fund Move to Heal and help keep it growing, right? And but Move to Heal is by 100 times more fulfilling than anything I ever did in business.
Wow.
And if only one person got helped, it would be that way.
Yeah. That's incredible. I have a couple of questions that I feel would be helpful to get your take on and your perspective. But what advice would you have for someone who may be struggling with addiction and contemplating seeking help? And, what are maybe some signs of, someone saying, okay, am I struggling with this? Is this normal behavior? What does that look like?
Well, there's sort of a few things that go along with this, but we call it like the 3 A's, right? There's awareness that there's an issue, right? And usually that's when things start going not right in your life or not in the way you would want them to go.
Okay.
And then there's acceptance of this problem and the severity of it. It's not going to go away. It's not like a cold where you're going to get over it.
Okay.
This is like diabetes where it doesn't leave you, right? You know, you're always going to have to watch it.
Okay.
And then there's action. And the hardest thing for anybody struggling with addiction is surrendering and asking for help. And
Why do you think that's the hardest thing?
because I think one of the strongest attributes of addiction is that it wants you to defend your right to use
Wow.
and not take that right away.
And you actually have to give it up.
Yeah,
and it's
at all
over.
costs.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't want you to stop. So you will blame the whole world before you blame yourself
Wow.
and look inward.
Yeah.
And that is every single addict or alcoholic I've ever met.
Yeah.
They have to get to a point where it's so bad that where you're staying in that hole is so painful that whatever you have to do is better.
Right.
And most people never get there. They die first.
And I think it's scary.
Unfortunately.
And I think it's
Yeah.
scary for people to actually admit they have a problem, because once you admit you have a problem, then
gotta
you
do
can't go
something.
back.
Yeah, you got to exactly.
Yeah.
You got to do something. What I see too is the pain that it's causing those around you, right? Like that's sometimes not even enough to seek help yourself.
Nobody cares about that.
You mean the
I mean,
addict? Like
the
addict does
active
not care.
addict or alcoholic doesn't even think about that.
Right.
It's not even in the radar until after you get sober.
Right. So what is it's just like the use, right? Like just using, like when am I going to be able to use next versus like
Right.
I have these people around me that I'm hurting who love me and they're in jeopardy of losing. Like that doesn't matter.
I think the drugs are so powerful and the addiction is so powerful that you can't even think about anything other
it's
than
like
yourself.
blinders.
Yeah,
on
you
drugs.
can't. I mean, unless something absolutely tragic happens, and this, I mean, I have one friend he killed his wife.
Wow. Wow.
Driving drunk,
Wow. Yeah.
and still drank after that.
Right.
Wow.
But that event eventually got him to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, the stories that I could tell you on what people did and how low they went, it's mind-boggling.
Right.
And then also hitting rock bottom, getting help, but then relapsing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Well,
a part of recovery.
Yeah, it happens
you
a
know?
lot. I mean,
That's
just
a really hard part of Move to Heal is being in the meetings and getting to know people and seeing them get better and heal, and then they disappear.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
well. There's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like, well, every bottom has a trap door.
Wow.
Meaning,
I've never heard that.
yeah. So awareness, action, and defeat is really there, and hopefully, people can reach that before they die. You know?
Yeah.
And especially nowadays with drugs that have things laced
gosh.
with
Oh, the fentanyl. It's terrible.
And
And that's everything from cocaine, Adderall. We did the walk for the fentanyl walk
Yeah.
like 2 years ago.
Well,
Just hearing
and,
those
and,
stories
and
were
the
so
and
impactful.
the counterfeit prescription drugs
Yes,
now
exactly.
that are they're putting fentanyl in there so that they kill the pain, but
And
you got one pill that you have is a killer, and you got one pill that's not.
Yeah.
and
You
it's
don't
so
know.
crazy
Terrible.
that people know that that's a risk, and that's how powerful the addiction is, that they are willing to die just to get high.
Yeah, yeah. It's so that it's
But I think just having those people know that there is help, and there are success stories of people changing their lives and getting healthy and sober. I think that, that's what Move to Heal is all about, showing that there's hope.
and you're not alone. I think that you feel isolated on this island. You're the only person experiencing this. You're the only person going through this, and no one can relate. And I just think even that little ounce of like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in a Move to Heal meeting, or I'm sitting in an AA/NA meeting, and I can actually relate to what that person's saying. I feel like that in itself can just bring a lot of hope to someone, because hope is big.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's true. And one of the other things I'll say is there's still this stigma out there. Like non-addicts and alcoholics that don't understand the disease say, why don't you just stop?
Right.
You're ruining
It's
your
a
life.
choice.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Like, this isn't a disease. This is just you not caring.
Mm-hmm. Or your will, you
this
don't have
is-
enough willpower to stop. And
Or you
things
have a
like that.
shitty personality and you're a bad person. Right?
Yeah.
And it's that stigma that, people go into hiding about this stuff.
Right.
you know?
Well, a huge reason why maybe someone would not want to
Right.
admit, I'm not
Exactly.
like them, or them, or whatever
Yeah.
that looks like,
Right. Right.
Are there, and this is actually a good segue, but are there common misconceptions about addiction and recovery that you'd like to address?
Well, sure. One is that it is a disease.
Mm-hmm.
It's an illness that none of us want. We can't control that we have it. We just have it. And it's not, a deficiency of willpower.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing, or discipline or anything like that.
Yeah.
That people that are struggling with something like this, it's a disease that tells us we don't have a disease.
Right.
So it's really, really hard to get to that point, where, most people don't, oh, I drank too much last night. I better stop and start going to meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Shit has to happen.
Like bad.
Bad stuff
Yeah.
has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then you still don't change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then really bad stuff has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And most times, until all the relationships are burned down, until all the money's gone, and you're homeless with no job, even then people don't realize. But literally, most of the people that do go all the way to the basement. They lose everything before they
Major health issues.
surrender.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
That too is, the impact that it has on your body,
Oh, you're putting poison into it. I
Well,
mean,
it's like you have people that have major health issues, like people that smoke cigarettes and they have lung cancer and they still continue to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk, because this is obviously a common thing, but triggers. How do you deal with them? How do you address them? Are they different now, almost 30 years into this, than they were, at the beginning?
Yes, definitely. I was a crackhead, so I still am a crackhead, but I was a active crackhead. So when I got into recovery, the obsessions didn't disappear. Some people have a bolt of lightning come down and they never want to use again or whatever, but not me.
Okay.
This is basically what would happen to me for the first few months. I would obsess about it. I'd go to a meeting. By the end of the meeting, it would be lessened long enough for me not to use until the next meeting. And that went on.
And you're going what, like every day, every other day?
Every day, twice, and sometimes twice a day.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it was a lot.
Okay.
I still go to 5 meetings a week.
Yeah.
So it's really important that I be reminded how important it is.
Why are those meetings so important to you?
Well, one of the other aspects of addiction is forgetting, and forgetting how bad it was, and forgetting how much it pulled, and the power of it and the strength. So for me, going to meetings and seeing somebody that can't stop,
Yeah.
sometimes that's the biggest help for me, as a person that's just getting there and talking about how bad their life is, or a person that's just coming back that has been trying for years and can't get it.
Okay.
And that could be me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could be me.
And
Wow.
I hear people a lot in the meetings talk about how when they think that they're healed and that they're good, that's when they know they need to come to meetings.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, I shared about that the other day. I had 5 years sober, and I went to my sponsor and I said, haven't wanted to use in a long time. I feel pretty good. I think I'm cured. You guys are laughing because you know. And he said to me, really? He goes, so the idea of going out to dinner, having a glass of wine with your wife, that's a great evening. And I said, a glass of wine? And he goes, yeah, one glass of wine with your wife at dinner. And I said, no, that doesn't sound like a great evening. He said, well, what would be a great evening if you could have one night where it didn't count? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'd go out, I'd have that glass of wine, and then have a couple of cocktails. Then I go pick up an 8-ball, and then I go home and drink vodka and snort and smoke cocaine until the next morning. And he looks at me and he goes, and you think you're cured?
Yeah, it's I think a lot of times people, when they get sober, when they're thinking about it, they're like, my life is going to be so boring and it's not going to be fulfilling, and how am I going to have fun? What would you say about that?
Well, first of all, I'll say this. Initially, that living on the edge and all that excitement disappears, but you're so relieved that you don't have to use, that your body is getting in better health, that you can actually do something on the weekends.
Right.
Like if I got my car washed, meaning take it to the car wash for 10 minutes and come home, I thought I had a very accomplished weekend. I mean, now I'll do, 100 times that.
You'll hike
in a
Kilimanjaro
weekend.
in
Yeah,
a
whatever.
weekend.
No, but I mean, it opens up. It frees you. It opens
freeing.
up. It opens up.
Isn't that
so many other
interesting? It is
possibilities.
freeing, and so many people think it's like going to trap them.
Yes. No. It's the most freedom I've ever had.
And I
Wow.
hear in the meetings, because we have a lot of old timers in the meetings and we have a lot of young people in the meetings. And I hear a lot of the old timers say, I am living my life beyond my wildest dreams.
Yeah. Wow.
And that is a saying I hear all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so inspiring to hear, especially for people that are struggling and trying to get sober.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, and this is another thing people say a lot of, especially if you've been around for a while. If I was to write out the best life I could ever have right when I got sober, and what that would look like, I would have sold myself short.
Wow.
Way short.
That's really special.
Way short.
Yeah.
And I say this to the young people too, because I think if people get this and how to work, how to do life at a young age and get off the addiction train and be in recovery and understand that it's a life, it's a lifetime thing that you have to keep doing, and your life will keep getting better, and you become a better person. All that stuff. Anybody in their 20s, they're going to be, their life will be amazing. And the sad thing is, with everything that's going on, we talked about the fentanyl before, all the stuff the risks that are out there now, most of them are dead by 40 if they don't.
Wow.
And to have such a vast, difference of results in a life, just by getting clean is amazing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. That's incredible. I know that we're kind of wrapping up here, but is there anything else, that you want to add, or anything that you feel would be important to share?
Well, the last thing you talked about triggers a little bit, and just to get into the addicted mind or the alcoholic mind.
Yeah.
There's 4 stages.
Okay.
There's the passing thought. Wouldn't it be nice to smoke some weed right now? Wouldn't it be nice to have a cognac and a cigar? Never did that, but it seems nice sometimes.
Yeah.
On the porch while the sun goes down.
Right.
Wouldn't it be nice? And those are the passing thoughts, right? And then it's the fantasy. How would I do it? I'd do that, and then I'd go out to dinner, you start fantasizing a little bit about it. And then that's stage 2. Stage 3, you start planning. How can I do this? How can I make that fantasy happen?
Right.
And then the 4th stage is to actually do it, to take action. Now, all 4 of those stages can happen in 3 minutes if you're in the wrong place. Okay. But the concept is, as in recovery, is that if you have the passing thought, go into your brain and remember how bad it was the last time you used, say a prayer, do something, right? Make a spiritual connection, meditate, do something. If you have the fantasy, talk to somebody about it. Tell them that you had it. If you're making the plan, you better be on the phone. Like, it's super important, and getting yourself to a meeting or doing something like that. So, and by the time you take the action, it's obviously too late. But you want to have little things set up in your mind so that when you sense these things or you feel these things, you react to them differently.
That's okay. I like that. I want to ask you, sorry, one more. I know we're wrapping up, but what would you say to someone, like, I would love to bring Mom on the podcast to really get her perspective from this other side. But when you were in your active addiction and then, getting into recovery, what is it that you needed from the people closest to you and your loved ones and your spouse or family?
That's a really great question. There's part of me that wants to say I needed support, and I needed support in the recovery in a loving way and supporting way, but I needed firmness in the consequences of not following through.
Wow.
And that would be like, you're not married to me anymore. You're out of the house.
Right.
You're on your own.
Right.
I'm not supporting you anymore.
Right.
These what seem to be harsh consequences, but that's what we need.
Saved your life.
Yes. 100%.
Right? Wow.
I think for anyone listening who has, his story is resonating with and they're struggling, Move to Heal is here to help. Just remember that Move to Heal meetings are not just for people with addiction. It's for anyone struggling with any life trauma. But Move to Heal could be such a resource for people like that, having the therapy, the nutrition, and the gym memberships, and the group support meetings. So just know that there's help out there. Yeah.
And, obviously, being in the AA program for so long, AA and NA, as a therapist, I work with a lot of people. Some people are like, oh, AA is not for me or whatnot. And that will completely turn them off from any sort of group setting. But it's different. You know what I mean? I see AA and NA obviously work for so many people and save so many lives. But having our meeting like this, absolutely. I think it's definitely a different vibe, a different perspective, but also a beautiful mix of so many different backgrounds, which I think is really nice.
And there's a whole group of people in our meetings that don't go to AA and go to Move to Heal because they
feel their main source of recovery.
Yeah, and they feel safer. And I'm not saying I always think more is better, and that people should do what they need.
Right.
And a combination of the two for me is what works, but that's not what works for everybody.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Yeah. But definitely let us be a resource if you're struggling, if you're thinking about anything, like Colleen said, that anything resonated with you, you can always reach out. We're always open for emails, phone calls, whatever it may be.
And as far as this particular podcast goes, if there's anybody that my story they connected with, email me at ethan@movetohealct.org, and let's make a connection.
Yeah, I love that.
That's amazing.
Well, E, thank you so much for all of this.
Ethan.
I feel like we can go on another hour or two talking about all of this, but thank you so much. We really appreciate your vulnerability and openness. So.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe our podcast and check back next week for another episode. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take
care.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye-bye.